Hi everyone, it's Jackie with Full Moon Loon Designs, and today I'm just over here just outside camera range because I'm trying to set it up to where we can see what the Cricut is doing, and then I can share with you what things are looking like after they're cut. I do have to get my arms in the way a bit as I'm working on the computer, but what I've got today that I'm going to be playing with is some 1/8 inch fiber. And I'm going to try using the rotary blade. I have the Cricut Maker. I'm going to treat this as if it's fabric, and that is, I believe, this one. I have to double check which blade I have there. But anyway, I'll be using the rotary blade. I'm going to use a paper cutter here because I'm also going to cut some pieces of ThinFire. I'll probably do it with papyrus, but I'm going to try ThinFire. One, I'm cutting some little heart templates for another project. The other is I saw Carrie from No Days had posted a piece she did some time back where she cut a mandala and sponged on or dabbed on, I think she used damp paper towel, glass line enamels. And I never seem to use my glass line enamels, so I thought, maybe I'll try that. So I'm going to play with cutting some ThinFire, and I just bumped the camera. Let's make sure we're still set. Yep. The other thing I've got is some freezer paper, and the reason I've got freezer paper is I'm thinking I am going to put my fiber, this is again just 1/8 inch fiber, onto the freezer paper, and then I'm going to use some of this painter's tape to tape it down. That way the fiber paper is not sticking to my mat. So that is the plan for the freezer paper. And let's see. Also, I have a variety of mats. When I'm cutting the ThinFire, I'm going to be using the blue cardstock or light grit mat because that's best for things like paper projects. And in all honesty, I'm probably just going to use my standard green mat with the rotary blade. Normally with fabric, I'm using pink. As you can see here, I cut out some of the neoprene masks. I don't think I need the fabric mat because, again, I'm going to have the freezer paper under there. So that is what I have. I also have my computer here that I'm going to play in Cricut Design Space. And I suppose ultimately I should probably turn on my Cricut. All right, the power of editing while I looked around for everything that I needed. And I did show you incorrectly earlier. This is the rotary blade. The one that I had in my hand earlier is the scoring blade, which actually I have found it's just as easy to use the traditional scoring stylus that people use with the Explorer Air 2 and probably some other ones. So I usually don't use that scoring blade, but this rotary blade is great for cutting fabric. This one has been used a little bit, but I think it's going to work fine for what we have today. So the first project I am going to do is cutting some of the fiber paper. I don't need my paper cutter at this time. I do need my piece of fiber paper, a piece of freezer paper, some painter's tape, and my mat. And this is not a new mat by far, but it should work well to hold down my freezer paper. And I'm thinking probably the slick side, we're going to try it up. So that's the side against the fiber. So I'm just going to put it on here. This was just not really scrap because it's a fairly good sized piece, but this was just a piece of 1/8 inch fiber that I had cut a couple of discs from. So what I'm going to do is actually make sure that I can kind of see where this starts. Like any design that I make, I'm going to want it within, after that first inch, and probably an inch down, just to make sure that I don't run off the edge, because I am going to be using some painter's tape here. So at this point, I'm just going to tape my edges down. And one thing I am going to try that will probably make a difference is moving these little wheels on the Cricut. I can't remember what those are called. Star wheels? Something like that. You'd think I would get to know my Cricut a little better, but usually I just have enough time to play and experiment and share with you, and get a lot of time to just research. But that's always a good thing, knowing the tools that you have. All right, now I can still kind of see where this is. I'm probably going to come down and cut something around this area here. So I am going to set my mat there for now. This is where, if you have a maker, you're familiar with this, you swap out your tools. I'm going to take out my regular fine point blade, and I'm going to put in the rotary fabric blade. And now in Cricut Design Space, that seems to not realize I have my Cricut plugged in. Let's do that. All right, I suppose I can turn my computer screen slightly so that you can hopefully see what's going on here. I've got software that will actually record this kind of thing, but we're not going that fancy today. All right, here's a project I had been working on. I don't care about that one now, so we're just going to replace. And of course, it wants an update. I'll be editing this out and get right back to you. All right, I have set this up. I have updated my Cricut Design Space. It wasn't too long of an update. I just basically had to restart it. And for this fiber test, I'm not going to try to do anything too intricate the first time. I just mainly wanted to try a shape, not just a square or circle. So I thought a heart where there is a little bit, I'm not sure how much of this you can see, but with a heart shape, you know, it's got to come in and cut into that a little bit. So let's see what happens when we click on Make It. I have it on my mat, but again, I set my mat up, as you recall, to where it's in just a bit. So I could even be technical and measure that. Of course, that would make a lot of sense. I don't have my ruler close enough by. We'll just kind of guess. We're gonna come, I'm just gonna be safe and say 2 inches down, 2 inches in. I've still got enough space there. We're not past the half, or we are, the fiber goes halfway past the center of the mat. So that should be just fine. So I'm going to just move this down a bit. Right about there should be just fine. Not too worried about wasting a little bit around the edges for this one. Just want to see if this method works. So I'm going to click continue. Now, what are we going to find for materials? I feel like this is almost like a felt. And maybe we should just look and see what kinds of fabric settings there are. Again, this is with the Maker, but, well, I guess you couldn't do this on the Explorer Air. Maybe with the fabric blade. I have not tried it, but this is a rotary blade, which is a little bit different. So we have different fabric settings. Just want to see maybe what our thicker ones are. Felt, faux suede. That might be similar in thickness. And then we have fleece, flex foam. Flex foam I think might be what I did the neoprene on. And flex foam can be a little thicker. Let's try flex foam. It's worth a shot. We do have our rotary blade in. So at this point now I am going to press the button. Thinking I'm gonna need more pressure before we continue there. So now we've got our rotary blade in, I've got more pressure, I've got it set to flex foam. I'm gonna slide this back out of the way and hit the button over here. All right, we're gonna find out together. Rotary blade on 1/8 inch fiber. Which is on a piece of freezer paper, and it looks like my placement was perfect. All right, let's release that. I think it looks like it cut just fine. Look at that. Yes, a rotary blade on a Cricut Maker cuts fiber. So I think I am going to maybe find a design now that has some cutouts and just see how that does. And I'm just going to leave this all in place. I'm just going to cut it out in a different area of my mat. That was fun. Let's see what else we can find. I'll shut off the camera, come back to it, and we'll continue. Okay, I have found a layered mandala design that I may just use for my next piece as well, or my next cut, which is going to be the ThinFire to paint. But I'm not going to cut all of these layers, and I hope some of this is showing up on the camera. I apologize, I don't have the best setup here to get both the laptop and the Cricut into view, but we'll try it. So what I'm going to do, you know how if you've used layered projects, you can hide your various layers. So I don't really care about most of these backgrounds. Now I've got 2 different layers here. If I hide the very simplest one, to me this might be a little too much, a little too busy to try to cut out of fiber. So I'm not going to use that one, but I am going to use this one. And I am going to resize this. Again, I've probably got about a good 4 inches of space here. This time I am going to measure it. Pardon my reach. This way I can see exactly where I need to come down on the mat. So I think if we come down about 4 inches, and then again, probably even just a couple of inches in, we should be good. Looks like I've got enough space to easily do about a 4-inch design. So I'm just going to set my mat in there. I'm going to resize this till it's about 4 inches. And I could really just do that up here too and just say 4 with the lock on. Looks like one side is slightly larger. That's interesting. All right, so I am going to click Make It. And again, this is where I need to move this down on my mat. So I said I wanted to be a couple of inches in and about, let's just double check that for how far to come down. I think if we come down about 4 1/4 inches and in by the 2 inches, we should be good. So in by 2, down by 4 or so. We're gonna try it right about here. And that looks like the end of it will be about 8 inches down, so let's make sure. Probably might help if I had the right end up. Yes, we should be just fine because this comes down to about the 10-inch point. So here we go. Now we'll see if it's able to cut out the little areas. I'm going to stick with my flex foam because that seemed to work really well. Again, I am going to use more pressure. So flex foam, more pressure, rotary blade, Cricut Maker. We are going to continue. This time the wheels are moved in, or out of the way, I should say. Fingers crossed. I'll move this out of the way so that you can hopefully see. It's detecting the tool, making sure that it has the rotary blade in. Oh, it might be close. Now this may be a little too intricate. This is what we'll find out. Let's see if I can move that camera in while it's cutting. Hopefully you can see how the blade is working there, how it turns and cuts, turns and cuts. Yeah, I may have overlapped with my prior cut, but that's all right. You just want to see how this works. A lot of little shreds around there, so hopefully this outer edge is cutting through. All right, the cut is done. Slide this back slightly here, just so I can reach it. All right. Okay, you can see that it did take some little pieces out. Yeah, it looks like this might be a little too intricate. Yeah, it's just, it cut through in too many places. So I think with some experimentation, this could work. You know, I can certainly save these pieces and reconstruct the design as well, like a negative. But yes, in general, it looks like the fiber cuts just fine. It's just finding that right setting to get your more intricate designs. So it did cut very clean. It's just when there's a lot of small pieces here. So I won't toss these. I'm sure these will work well. Even just the shapes are kind of like flower petals. If I don't use them as a mandala type of project, I could certainly use them as I'm working on any kind of flower project where I might be draping or slumping or putting filler in between petals. But here you can see all of these little pieces. Hopefully you can see. Let me slide the camera back. So yes, it does cut 1/8 inch fiber. You're just going to have to probably not do the more intricate designs. So that is the fiber experiment. Next up, we will be working on the ThinFire. All right, I'm now going to work on some layers that I'm going to cut out of ThinFire that I'm going to try applying some enamels, either glass line or something to it. I have a piece of ThinFire here that was not completely new, so it's shaped a little weird. I'm not worried about filling my whole mat. I don't think I'm going to need to, because even if I cut all of these layers, it's about a 4.4 inch by 4 inch design, so I know I'm going to need, if I cut all layers, 2 across, 2 down, so yeah, 11 is going to be fine. And I'm not even worried about it being perfectly square. I'm just going to take my excess ThinFire, set that aside, set my paper cutter aside. And again, I mentioned at the beginning, I am using a fabric, or I'm sorry, a light, what do they call it? A light grit mat. Looks like I've got some schmutz on there from another time. I am going to put my fiber paper down. I'm sorry, ThinFire paper. I don't want to confuse this with the fiber I did in the earlier part. So this has been put down on my light grit mat. I could probably brayer that down, use my scraper to burnish it just to make sure, even though it's light grip, I still want to make sure it is sticking and this mat is not exactly new, as you saw. So I set that aside so you can see my design here. And what I'm going to do, because I'm not cutting this out of different colors, I am actually going to cut all of these out of this same piece of ThinFire. But I'm going to look at it in a couple different ways. Like, what if I took maybe 1 or 2 of these out? What does it look like? Probably want this background, the base piece. This one maybe I could take out. Yeah, that looks a little weird. So I think what I want to do before I actually get too far with this, I want to show all my layers again. I'm actually going to duplicate it just in case I totally destroy something. I'm just going to set that off to the side. So now I've got my design. I'm fine with that size. I want to ungroup. So I have all the layers, which are technically all grouped together to start with. I'm going to hit ungroup. And that's going to allow me to see kind of what each layer looks like. So this definitely looks fun. It looks like maybe those might be a little thin, but we're going to try it. It is just paper. There's another layer if we pull that out. So now you can see that there's 4 separate layers here. We're going to hide this other one for now. Whoops, wrong one, sorry. Oh my goodness, this guy. There we go. So this will be the base background, and that's where I could sponge or apply one maybe layer of some enamels or paints. If we put just that over it, I don't know, how about if we put just that over it? That's kind of cool. I really don't want to do a full 4 layers because I'm not sure how that would work in firing the ThinFire. So I think we will just go ahead and hide this layer. And I do want to look at that one more time. Yeah, it just doesn't have enough design of what I want to see. So now I've got basically 2 layers here. One is a solid, one is going to be more like a lace cut. And I've got plenty of space on my mat. So what I'm going to do now is actually turn these into the same color so it only does it on one mat. And that is under Color Sync. And I can just maybe undo that. I think it'll be easier to see it black on the screen. There we go. So now these are both going to be sent to the same mat, which is what I want. I've got my paper on there. It's at least 11 inches long and a little over 11 inches wide. The way I've got it set right here should be just fine. So I'm going to click on Make It. And this is ThinFire paper. To me, it feels like a kind of a light cardstock. So I think we'll look at our cardstock settings. I'm fine with where that's placed on the mat. I'm going to hit Continue. And let's see what we got. We've got a medium cardstock. It doesn't feel as heavy as medium, so maybe a lighter cardstock. Light cardstock is 65. I think that's, or cardstock for intricate cuts. You know, I'm going to try that. Pressure, I think I am going to stick with regular default. If we see that it doesn't cut all the way through, you know what? No, I know my experience with cutting through paper. Actually, I'm going to go more. So sorry about that. I'm going to do cardstock, more pressure, intricate cuts, fine point blade. We're ready to load it in, so let's see what happens. I apologize. See this? We did in the last one. I forgot to move them back. So I am going to put these little star wheels back. That should be good. All right. Now we're going to load the mat. Got a regular fine point blade. I'm not doing fast mode or any of that, so I'm just going to hit go. Setting a piece of cardstock down colored just so that as I remove this I can lay it down and it'll show up better. Alright, we're ready to remove it from the Cricut. Hopefully you can see this quite well on camera. I think it looks like it cut very well. I am going to fold it over this way, turn it over this way, and just start carefully removing. This is where I'm going to use my scraper a bit. And so again, I'm using the light grip mat. I'm also turning it over this way. I've seen a few other crafters do this. It really helps so that you don't just peel it off and either get it curling up or worse, tearing. So just trying to make sure that any of these little pieces that are left behind are supposed to be left behind. It's looking pretty good. More ThinFire, which I am going to be cutting some more for a different project. I have little pieces here that I could certainly use for something. Probably not going to worry about those today. And a good point I didn't think about before cutting this, it is ThinFire. There is a little bit of dust. It's probably a good idea to wear a mask or respirator when you are cutting this or the fiber paper. So my apologies, I did not cover that as a safety tip. I'm not too worried about these little inside pieces here this time. So I'm just cleaning them off my mat. I'm going to file them below here. So here is, here, like I said I would, so you could see, here are the two shapes that I cut, the solid background that I can apply some kind of color to, and then I'll apply some contrasting colors to this top layer, and we'll see what happens. I'll share that in a separate video once I get that set up to fire. But anyway, here is cutting ThinFire with a Cricut, and I'm using the Maker. For this project, you definitely could use a regular Cricut. You just have to set your dial to custom to be able to find the different settings. So this one I did cut using cardstock for intricate cuts, the fine point blade, and more pressure. All right, I have one more project I am going to cut from ThinFire. I have some heart shapes, and I again have ThinFire cut to at least the size that I need on the light grip mat. And my wheels are all in place. I am going to, let's see if I can show you this. Once I hit make it, we're going to find those settings if they're not still set from last time. It always tells me to connect my Maker, even though it's connected. A little bit irritating. All right, last time when I cut the ThinFire, I was using the cardstock for intricate cuts. I did not save it as a favorite, so let's come out here and find it. Type card stock. Oh, I swear, sometimes when you search as one word cardstock, things are not found. All right, here we go. And other times, like I typed it too. I am using cardstock for intricate cuts. That worked well last time. I am going to use more pressure. And again, I should have stressed this in the beginning. You're cutting fiber paper, you're cutting ThinFire, you should be wearing a mask. I did not bring mine in here today, so I'm not gonna hover over this while it's cutting. But here we've got the fine point blade in, and I am just going to hit the button to continue. All right, this is done. And I am done for today with Design Space, so I'm going to close that, release this, power off my machine, and once again, because I am working with paper, I like to go this direction and peel it away carefully. Scraper tools are great for this. So now I have cut some hearts out of ThinFire. So I hope this inspires you to play with your Cricut or your other die cutting machines. I just happen to have the Cricut Maker. There's tons of different types of files out there depending on which machine you're using. But the main test today was to try both on ThinFire as well as the 1/8 inch fiber paper. Where did I set my heart? I lost my heart, but not in San Francisco. Here it is, out of camera reach. This is the first heart that I cut, and then as you know, when I did try the mandala piece, I think it totally cut it fine. It's just the problem, and let me bring it back into view here. I believe the problem was just having too thin of areas here that were in between. But as you can see, the outer rim there cut nicely. It cuts clean. All of these pieces are nicely done. So yeah, I could actually set those up and create a mandala shape. But it definitely cuts through the fiber. I'll put the settings again at the end of the video in a slide just as a refresher, and that way you don't have to go back and rewatch the video to see what paper settings, what materials, what blades, and so forth I used. So I'll have that here at the end. But anyway, have some fun with your cutting machines and your glass, and combine two crafts. That's always fun, or two arts. And anyway, enjoy, and I hope you're having a wonderful day. Thanks for watching.